You ever have that one moment where your chest tightens and your heart sinks because you suddenly realize someone's inside your house? Someone who absolutely shouldn't be there? That's exactly the situation I found myself in. It was a quiet evening. I'd just finished a cup of coffee and was lounging in the living room when I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from upstairs. My blood ran cold. Nobody else was supposed to be in the house. My gut told me burglary, and without thinking, I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a thick metal flashlight. With it clenched in my hand, I crept up the staircase, every creak of the steps sounding like a thunderclap in the silence. When I reached the hallway, I froze. There he was, a lanky teenage boy rummaging through my bedroom drawers like he owned the place. The second he noticed me, his face drained of color, but instead of bolting, he smirked. "You can't do anything," he sneered. "My mom runs the HOA. I can go wherever I want." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. This kid had just broken into my house, and his excuse was that his mother, the HOA president, gave him free rein to do whatever he pleased. My hands tightened on the flashlight as fury surged through me. "Get out of my house, now!" I snapped. But he didn't move. He just leaned against my dresser, calm as if he were in his own bedroom. The arrogance rolling off him was infuriating. That was it. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 right in front of him. "You better be gone before the cops arrive," I warned. He chuckled, shaking his head. "They won't touch me. Mom says people like you don't matter." But minutes later, flashing blue and red lights lit up my street. Officers rushed inside, and suddenly the boy's confidence vanished. He tried to protest, yelling about his mother's power, but the cops weren't buying a word of it. Within moments, he was in cuffs, his shouts getting more frantic with every clink of metal. The officers reassured me I'd done the right thing. Still, a chill lingered. If this kid felt entitled enough to walk into my home once, what would stop him, or worse, his mother, from doing it again? As I stood in the doorway, watching the squad car pull away with him in the back seat, one thing became clear. This wasn't over. His mother wasn't going to let this slide. Sure enough, the next morning my fears came true. I woke to furious pounding on my front door. I didn't even need to look to know who it was. And when I opened it, there she stood. Karen, blonde bob, cut, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy sky, arms crossed, foot tapping like a metronome of rage. She radiated fury, as though she'd spent all night rehearsing her anger. "You had no right to call the police on my son," she snapped the moment I cracked the door. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Still groggy but already irritated, I shot back, "Yeah, you're the lady whose son broke into my house. That's who you are." Her nostrils flared. "He wasn't breaking in. He was inspecting. As HOA president, I have the authority to let my family check for violations." I almost laughed in her face. "Violations in my bedroom drawers?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she shoved a stack of papers at me. "You're going to regret this. I'll fine you. I'll blacklist you. I'll make sure you can't even sell your house. My son doesn't belong in jail. He belongs in this neighborhood, protected by me. You? You're nothing but a troublemaker." The urge to slam the door in her face was overwhelming, but I kept my cool. "Karen, the police didn't arrest him because of me. They arrested him because he broke the law. Your HOA badge doesn't change that." For the first time, her mask cracked. She clearly wasn't used to being challenged. Most of the neighborhood probably bent under her threats, but not me. She huffed, threw me one last burning glare, and stomped down my driveway. The rest of that day, I kept catching her lurking, sitting in her SUV across the street, phone glued to her ear, clearly plotting her next move. And by evening, she made it official. The retaliation began. First came a letter in my mailbox, hand-delivered, claiming my lawn wasn't in compliance with HOA standards. Then another one saying my garbage cans were improperly positioned. By the end of 2 days, I'd racked up over 6 so-called violations, each more ridiculous than the last. It was obvious. She was weaponizing the HOA to punish me for daring to stand up to her son, but what she didn't realize was that I wasn't angry. I was prepared. Every petty notice, every bogus fine, every hostile confrontation, I kept records of it all. I took photos, scanned letters, and even recorded some of her outbursts, because one thing was certain. Sooner or later, Karen would go too far. And when she did, I'd be ready. She thought her harassment would wear me down, but every piece of paper she shoved in my mailbox only made me sharper. She was digging her own grave, and she didn't even know it. A week later, while I was trimming my hedges, I overheard her bragging to another neighbor. Her voice carried across the street, shrill and arrogant. "The HOA board does whatever I say," she gloated. "That man won't last 6 months here. Either he pays or he leaves." That was the breaking point for me. It wasn't just about my house anymore. Karen wasn't targeting only me. She had been using her so-called authority to bully the entire neighborhood. Suddenly, things clicked into place. The Jones family, never opening their blinds. The elderly couple on the corner never pushing back when she scolded them about weeds in their flower beds. This wasn't coincidence. Karen had ruled the block through intimidation for years. But unlike the others, I wasn't afraid. I'd already reached out to the detective handling her son's case, and he was more than eager to hear about Karen's antics. He told me to keep documenting everything, because harassment tied to her son's arrest could strengthen the case against them both. And then, almost on cue, her son struck again. This time, not in my house, but in the Wilsons' garage, was caught red-handed trying to borrow tools. Except the Wilsons had cameras. The footage showed him sneaking in, pocketing items, and running off. The Wilsons had had enough. Tired of being pushed around, they marched straight to the police. With the footage, that was the missing puzzle piece. Now, it wasn't just my word against Karen's. The police could clearly see a pattern. One evening, an officer stopped by to take another statement. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "We're looking at multiple charges now: breaking and entering, theft, harassment. Your HOA president might think she runs this street, but the law doesn't answer to her." Hearing that gave me a rush of satisfaction I hadn't felt in weeks. Karen's empire of fear was crumbling, and ironically, her son's arrogance had been the spark that lit the fuse. Still, I couldn't help but wonder, how far would she go once she realized the law wasn't on her side anymore? People like her rarely go down quietly, and sure enough, I was right. The day everything came crashing down for Karen started like any other. Her SUV sat parked in front of my house, engine running, as though her presence alone could intimidate me. But this time I didn't bother pulling the curtains closed. I knew something she didn't. The police were already preparing to make their move. By mid-afternoon, 2 squad cars rolled silently into the neighborhood. Officers stepped out, calm and deliberate, and headed straight for Karen's front door. My heart raced as I watched from the window. Seconds later, her shrill voice pierced the street. "This is harassment! You can't do this! I am the HOA!" But titles don't mean much when handcuffs are waiting. Her son was dragged out first, still mouthing off about how unfair everything was. Then Karen appeared, clutching a thick folder of HOA paperwork as if it were her shield. "These papers give me rights!" she screamed. The officers didn't even blink. They read her charges one by one: harassment, intimidation, obstruction, and accessory to burglary. That was the moment the neighborhood spell broke. Curtains opened, doors creaked. Neighbors who had been silent for years stepped onto their porches, watching as Karen's reign unraveled. I caught Mrs. Wilson whispering, "Finally," as relief spread across her face. Karen kept shouting, threatening lawsuits, promising revenge, but it didn't matter anymore. The illusion of power was gone. She wasn't the queen of the HOA anymore. She was just another resident in cuffs, and for the first time in years, the street felt lighter, peaceful. Neighbors crossed over to me, shaking my hand, thanking me for standing up when no one else had dared. That's when it hit me. This hadn't just been about protecting my home. It had been about freeing the entire community from one family's grip. Later that evening, the detective called with an update I'd been waiting to hear. Her son's got a new home, he chuckled. A jail cell, and with the charges stacking up, Karen won't be running any HOAs for a long, long time. I leaned back in my chair, finally letting the relief sink in. Weeks of tension, threats, and bogus violations had ended. My house was mine again, safe and quiet. No HOA bully was ever going to take that away. And as for Karen's son, with his smug little line, my mom runs the HOA. I can do whatever I want. Well, the police had already given him the best answer. No, you can't. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more outrageous HOA drama, hit that like button, share your reaction in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life stories.